Today's Gospel, in the context of serious scientific research, Conradin Ferrari di Occhio, the Star of the Magi, allows us to historically reconstruct that important event of the Epiphany. He was first made known to the shepherds, who knelt before him. On the feast of the Epiphany, however, the priests pay homage to him, not the Israelites, who do not want to know anything about him. Certainly not the king, who, like today, the princes of the church, fears nothing more than to lose his position, but, with probability bordering on certainty, pious astronomers from the long-abandoned Babylon. Alone this allegory is significant, and with God, allegories are not poetic outgrowth, but reality. From the whore of Babylon of all things, long abandoned, as all advanced civilizations will be one day because of their moral corruption, astronomers come, who had held out in the almost abandoned city in their observatory. The stars always gave them information about the counsel of the One, in whom ultimately the whole antiquity believed in the inheritance of the primordial revelation, which is veiled to us only by the historians. The idols of the pagans were therefore demons, because not only the corruption of the advanced civilizations hid behind it the One. Today it is not different. Instead of Zeus, Hera, and Athena, one today believes in evolution, sex, and psychology. Not so these astronomers. They were looking for God's finger pointing, and they saw in the late spring of the year 7 BC the star of Marduk, Jupiter, approaching the star of the Jewish people, Kewan, Saturn, to dwell there, which also explains the Gospel passage that speaks of only one star, because the two were to, quote, reign together, end quote. By an optical illusion due to the difference of the planetary orbits, this really seems to be so for a while. This happens only every 854 years, and also explains the expression in the Gospel. In fact, the correct translation of the Greek astronomical technical terms, which Jerome lost for the translation of the Vulgate, is, quote, "And behold, the star which they had seen in the evening, rising, passed before them, until it stopped in the going above where the child was." End quote. But this happened, remeasured and reconstructed, on November 12th of the year 7 AC, when the two planets not only appeared to be stationary, but they also shone constantly at the tip of the zodiacal light cone, the Milky Way, despite a slow upriding on the same place as seen from Jerusalem, namely Bethlehem, about 8 kilometers away. This is how they found Christ. Quote, "When they beheld the star, they were glad with exceeding joy." End quote. And they offered the gifts to him, and received, quote, in a dream the instruction, end quote, not to return to Herod, but to take another way. Here no angel is mentioned for the dream face, and in fact the planet Mars, the messenger of disaster and the symbol of the hostile Western peoples, was approaching Jupiter with giant steps, with which this, and with it the Messiah, as the three wise men had to assume, was in danger. Already 3 months before they had been able to calculate this for February of the next year. Certainly they had inquired in Jerusalem about the really hated Herod, and now drew their conclusions. What a disappointment that must have been. These saints had traveled 1,100 kilometers for over 3 months to serve the Messiah, and then they learn that he is in danger? Could they have helped him? Hardly. Strangers always attract attention, and Herod's henchmen would have found the Holy Family correspondingly faster. For us, the closer analysis of this Gospel is all the more interesting because we have here a splendid example of the detailed truthfulness of the same. It is said by the author quoted above, alluding to the Mesopotamians mentioned by Luke in the Acts of the Apostles, Apostles 2:9 to speak. Quote, "Nevertheless, we may see in this a suggestion of the possibility that connections were established between the Babylonian Magi and some of the apostles, through which an account of the pilgrimage to the newborn boy Jesus may have come into the hand of the evangelist Matthew. We have met enough reasons for the fact that this report was taken over essentially unadulterated into the Gospel. The chronological order of the astronomical and earthly events is in the best order. The most important phases of the celestial phenomena, according to Babylonian theory, are indicated with the technical terms applicable for it. The events are described from the point of view of the Magi, who were for some even the only eyewitnesses. Just at such a place, the report steps out of its factual reserve quite strikingly. A moving outburst of self-experienced joy resounds in the words, "They were exceedingly glad." Some will now cry out that if all calculations point to April 7th of the year 30 as the date of the crucifixion, then Christ must have had more than 33 years. Neither in Holy Scripture nor in the actual tradition is a speech of 33 years, even if it is a pious belief. Even today, we do not know whether Peter was crucified in 64 or 67, so what does it matter? The interesting thing about today's Gospel is that it is a factual report in detail, which an exact interpretation does not, as is usual today, try to explain away an eternal truth, but gives an immense insight into what belongs to God's greatest miracles. Not the miracle in the strict sense of breaking the laws of nature is the greatest, but the absolute simplicity of God, His absolutely simple I am. Out of mercy and for our salvation, cf. Vatican Council, God works the miracle of breaking the laws of nature, which is complicated, but simpler, and the one of Him is the simple providence, namely to leave the planets at the time of the birth of Christ in such a way so that the wise men from the Orient find Him. Matthew confirms this because he does not suddenly leave the 3 wise men in front of the child in Bethlehem, as it would have been to be taken from the words of the Mother of God, but he, the tax collector, writes an astronomical technical report with expressions he could not know, and to which God would certainly not have inspired him if the birth of Christ would be dated later. Thus, however, both are possible and probably both have taken place. Matthew receives from at least one of the wise men the exact report of the most important event in his life, and God makes sure that he writes it down correctly. The author of the above-mentioned book spent 40 years of his life researching the contents of the not even 170 pages, and this may indicate not only scientific ambition of the former full professor of theoretical astronomy in Vienna, but a lot of love and reverence. Like the wise men who risked their lives on a journey of 2,500 kilometers, with all the twists and turns of the caravan path, he spent 40 years with the striking report in the Gospel of Matthew. How far do we go for the Holy of Holies? How long do we search for the truth?